Hello, everyone. I'm Rick Zanotti, and wherever you are, we hope you're having a great day. This is episode number 59 of eLearnChat, May 23rd, 2012. Joining me is our sultry-voiced co-host. Here's Colleen Sunley. Hey, Colleen.
Hey, Rick. Good morning. How are you? Good morning, good day to everyone who's viewing live or the archived episode in Vimeo.com. And today, our guest is Joe Gorup from CourseAvenue, and Joe's going to be discussing with us what's holding back mobile learning. And Joe's from CourseAvenue, and he started the company back in 2003. So we're looking forward to hearing what Joe's perspective is today on mobile learning. And I believe CourseAvenue also designs or develops ADA compliant learning. So welcome, Joe, and thank you for joining us
Hi,
today.
Joe. How are you?
Okay, hey, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on, and I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you guys.
No, we're glad you could make it. So, Joe, tell us a little bit about what CourseAvenue does.
Well, half of our business comes from our software platform. It's an enterprise-class web-based authoring system that lets lots of people build e-learning. And it's a collaborative environment whereby you let multiple people work together to build a course. So half of our revenue comes from companies licensing our software, and then the other half comes from us helping people build e-learning. Just give us you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor, and your PowerPoints, and we we'll convert that to any variety of online learning. And as Colleen mentioned, one of the specialties we have is doing Section 508 compliance or ADA compliant e-learning.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that's a pretty complicated thing to do, but what we've really worked on doing is making it easy for anybody to create a ADA compliant, 508 compliant e-learning, which that's the trick. I mean, there's a lot of solutions out there that make it developer dependent.
Right.
And that can be a tough road to hoe because it's really complicated. So we've kind of encapsulated. We took all the intricacies of the 508 specifications and so forth and built it into the software itself, making it, again, just trying to drive down the cost and make it a lot easier to create lots of 508 compliant e-learning.
I keep saying that if graphic artists actually learned contrast, we would have much less of a need for 508 compliance, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a part of it. It's funny, one of the things we've seen is just tab order.
Oh, that too, yeah.
That when people, when you lay out a screen, if you don't do it right, the person that's using adaptive technology is kind of bounced all over the screen. So
right.
By kind of.
Now, do you work with tools like JAWS or any of those kind of readers, or is it something you've developed yourself?
We certainly know a lot about JAWS and Window Eyes and a bunch of other adaptive technology. One of the things that we know is actually a problem is sometimes people will build JAWS specific or screen reader specific things, and that's not a really good way to go because there's actually a lot more things out there, and you can actually have something that works great in JAWS but actually fail 508 compliance for any number of other reasons. So while we are familiar with JAWS, we generically make our stuff accessible. I don't want to get into all the gory details, but there's certainly a bunch of behind-the-scenes things you can do.
Right.
And if you do it right, JAWS will work fine, but so will lots of other things.
That sounds great. What made you guys get into the ADA side of it? There's always a story behind that.
Yeah, I was actually at a meeting, and someone asked me about 508 compliance, and I'm like, 508, 509, whatever it takes. It was. I didn't know a whole lot about it, and I kind of went down this path. Well, let's see. It's Flash. Our predominantly we've used Flash to deliver our e-learning. I'm like, well, heck, if Adobe is in here and Adobe's using the government, they must be compliant, so we must be compliant. And then I looked into it a lot, and I realized, well, wait a second. It's a lot more complicated than just saying, than checking a box saying make this thing accessible. And so based on that research, we looked around and we found that, frankly, there's a lot of really bad solutions out there. I'm not a big fan of. There's people that will, to achieve ADA compliance or 508 compliance, what they'll do is they'll create the PDF version of the course. In other words, everyone gets the interactive course with the assessments and the feedback and those kind of things. But for 508 compliance, here's your PDF file. That really doesn't seem, that's not consistent with the spirit of the law, if nothing else. It theoretically could be maybe passing of the law. But so we said we want to build one course for everybody. And we went down a path for about a year and a half and about $1 million of investment to actually embed the tab order, accessible, all the things that make something accessible, tab order, sequencing, and so forth, to make all that accessible in the product. So I can create one course, and if you look at a course, you can't even tell that it's, quote, a 508 compliant course.
Yeah. No, that's great. I've done a little bit of work with the Foundation Fighting Blindness, and I know a lot of people who have macular degeneration, retinitis pigmentosa, and they really suffer through JAWS and some of those other programs. Because you're right, they're a little buggy. I mean, JAWS is expensive too.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's certainly, it's really, I mean, if you find a JAWS expert, I mean, they are invaluable because they can do things, they can make it do things that, I can stand on its head, that kind of thing. And so we've had to ramp up our abilities and our know-how of the adaptive technology. But you're right, any given, well, it's like any software, right? I mean, it's like a specific version of the browser, a specific version of the operating system, a specific version of JAWS. You throw all that together and try to debug something like, hey, it's this doesn't work. That can be a tough road to hoe.
Right.
And it was about that time, actually, to kind of segue into the mobile space, we actually looked at doing mobile learning. We had like a decision to make. Do we put our resources into focusing on the 508 compliance business, or do we focus on mobile? And this was back in the days of the famous, like the classic Nokia 3100 days, like little postage stamps. And that's where we consciously made the decision not to go down that route because it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to us. The platform wasn't right. We didn't think that trying to do little tiny true-false questions on a postage stamp-sized screen was actually kind of very viable.
No,
so that's where we kind of stayed out for that.
Pretty much in the mobile side, especially with the smaller phones. Now with the smartphones, it's a little bit bigger. You could get about maybe the second line on an eye chart, and that's about it. There's not a lot of room.
Yeah, so again, what we kind of perfected, what we at a really high level, what we said was, well, we look at the 508 market, and it's very complicated. There's a lot of intricacies, and any given developer struggles to try to make it all work.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't sense. Here, go to section508.gov, download that PDF,
oh, I know,
and all of a sudden make yourself an expert.
Yep.
And so what we also saw then as the mobile side came up over the past couple of years, we see that there's a lot of complexities in there as well. And so we kind of took what we learned from doing the handicapped access pieces and actually made it and applied that to our latest mobile offering.
That's great. Now, Colleen, you had a question.
Yeah, I was going to ask Joe, now with the 508 stuff, is it only for the visually impaired individuals, or what kind of audience are you catering to?
No, I mean, and that's probably one of the fallacies. It's a lot of people believe that it's just for the visually impaired. And to be compliant, you have to address all kinds of different things, everything from cognitive disabilities to mobility. And so a classic example, we do some work with the Veterans Administration, and it's somewhat heart-wrenching when you look at some of the guys coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq that don't have hands.
Right.
So they can either use a voice command software like Dragon. Or they'll have some other, or let's just say they can't use a mouse. The ability to the fine motor skills necessary to move the mouse just isn't there. So they're focused on the keyboard, and so making sure that the e-learning is fully handicapped accessible, and that does mean either integrating with voice command software. If nothing else, you darn well better be keyboard very, very keyboard friendly, or keyboard. Everything has to be keyboard accessible. The last thing you want to do is.
And are you finding that there's a larger demand from federal government type organizations, or even just government organizations, or just from any organization at all? It's across the board.
Definitely a ramp up in the federal side. It just seems that even though Section 508 compliance is part of the FAR. It's the Federal Acquisition Regulation. It is, what you have to be 508 compliant. That doesn't mean everyone is. And lately, over the past 3 or 4 years, we've actually seen an increase in people becoming aware and actually realizing what that's all about. So on the federal side, definitely. And then on the corporate side, what we've done is we've tried to drive down the cost of making something ADA compliant. So what we've seen is more often than not, as we're talking to our customers, we'll say, hey, do you want me to make your technology 508 or ADA compliant? And more we're getting the answer yes, that we wished people that were even the corporate side, are becoming more aware of making things handicap accessible.
That's great. In fact, ADA was actually designed originally for Congress because they were so disabled. That's another issue. Anyway, hey, any comments from the chat room?
Not so far yet, Rick.
Okay. Now, today we're going to talk about what are the impediments to going mobile.
Yeah.
That's an interesting subject because, everybody's got the buzzword of mobile this, mobile that.
Right.
And I keep saying it's a solution in search of a problem. We're not there yet, but it is going to get there eventually somewhere. So now I have the slides from your deck. I don't know if you want to share or do you want me to just go through?
Yeah, I threw up a few slides I wanted to share because as we've been talking to people, like what is mobile learning, and there's PhDs out there that will, people write PhDs to discuss exactly that. We've seen everything from people claiming like, oh, I took a PDF file and I put it on my website, and now people can get to that from their phone. So, hey, we're doing mobile learning. And I'm like, no, that's not really it. And then I've had other people that they took something and recorded it in an MP4 file and put that on our web server and said, yep, we're now doing mobile learning. And so what I did is I took a few screenshots of like, hey, these are some examples of what we consider, not just me, it's really our customers, consider as a mobile learning, what would be considered a mobile learning application. If you can see that screen, that was a Flash interaction. And what we've done is we've enabled it so if you happen to launch this from let's say Internet Explorer, you'll get the Flash version. If you happen to launch the same course from, let's say, what you're looking at here is an iPad, we have an alternate media, and it's showing the HTML5 friendly version.
Okay.
So overall, what you're looking at is it's a full-blown course. It has 20-some pages. In this case, it's an assessment question based on some optics. So basically, the question is like, hey, based on this diagram, this animation you're looking at, who is the scientist behind this? And so what we're looking at is that's just one example of something that could be desktop-based. You could run this on your iPhone. You could run this on an Android device, or in this case, an iPad.
That sounds good.
Can we go to the next slide there? What we're looking at is another case where just another case in point, integrated video. In this case, you're looking at in the upper left corner, it's a iPhone version, and then that's the same course running. I think it's on Safari on a desktop. So the concept being that, hey, I want to start a course on my desktop. And then, hey, I really got to catch that train. I really got to get home, but I need to finish this course. So the concept being that I could kind of pick up right where I left off, and continue that from there.
Okay, so you're bookmarking between the sessions
across the devices. Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one of the key things that we know you need to be able to do. If you don't do that, well, how can you can't really pick up where you left off because you don't know you're there. And then you have the third slide up there.
Here we
the
go.
Third. And that one, that's just another case in point of another kind of a mobile. This is an interesting one. This is what we call a learning app. It's an intersection of someone giving instructions, imparting a bunch of information down to somebody about their roles in life and those kind of things, and then using again the iPhone, the iPad, an Android device, or your desktop. They're actually interacting with this thing. They're selecting in what the screen is showing. What roles do I play in life? I'm a father. I'm a business owner. Yada yada, and then later on in the course, maybe 20 minutes later, they can describe their vision for every one of the roles that they've selected. So I just want to give my real point in showing these was really just from a sampling of it's not a postage stamp size thing. It's not a PDF file. It's not simply a video. It's a fully interactive course that can be done across devices.
I have a question from the chat room, Rick, and it's for Joe. It's does it require a learning platform to be considered learning? They want to know how you define, or how does CourseAvenue define mobile learning?
Does it have to be a learning platform? My first gut said no. I mean, if you're trying to convey information to people, platform or not, I mean, the only thing I would think you'd want to require, and our definition is you need to be tracking it. There's been a lot of talk out there where you don't, it's mobile learning. You don't need to track it. And I can't find one of my customers, and that ranges from small companies to nonprofits to large federal agencies, that, hey, if I'm giving people access to mobile learning, or maybe I should put it like that, I want to give people access to learning using mobile devices. So I don't mean to kind of play games here, but is it mobile learning, or is it giving people access to learning using their mobile devices?
I think it's the latter. I think it's your second definition.
That's my second definition. So exactly, specifically what is a quote mobile learning application? I don't know. But the feedback I've gotten from my customers and our focus groups and so forth is I want access to the education, whatever you want to call it, which actually is a good segue to the next slide I had there, Rick, which is kind of our vision is, and back to the impediments of what's kind of holding back mobile learning, is just that, the fact that people sometimes treat it as a separate thing. And I know it kind of grew up in the from the Nokia 3100 days and those kind of things. And again, in talking to the customers that I have out there, that they have a tremendous infrastructure. They've spent millions and millions of dollars on their content, on their LMS, and they see all these. And then that's on one hand. On the other hand, they have truckloads of iPads being delivered to the back room. Executive training sessions are now executives are being handed iPads as far as when they join the company. And so you have an executive that shows up with their iPad.
Playing Angry Birds.
Playing Angry Birds, yes. And and then he goes to launch a course he has a compliance training. It's federal, some kind of compliance course. Well, the guy wants access to it. So we can debate whether or not, does it require an avatar? Does it do this? Is it based on some guy's location? Well, that's all great, but when the CFO is wants to take a course at home, well, that's kind of a tough thing. Well, you really can't do that now. So what we see is that on that little slide, that the coming together thing, it's the notion of, why don't we just focus on the learning aspects of it, and then give people access to whatever you want to call it. If it is just a PDF, well, so be it. But if you solve the problem, if you look at the challenges of MLearning, and you solve it in the context of e-learning and kind of build those things together, I think you have a much better shot at it. Which is the segue to my next slide. I think I had what happens if you try? Isn't that slide great? Isn't that picture great?
It is. It actually is.
So we're trying to explain. It's look, if you design a solution from two distinct areas, you end up with something like this. It's like, what do I do with this? It's probably not very well. I can't really fly this thing very well. It's going to be pretty darn unstable. I can't put it in my garage. I can't just pull up to a gas station and fill up. So that is like, I look at that diagram and it's like, or that picture, and that's like, well, that looks like that's what happens if you try solving a problem in two different domains. Now, if you go to the next slide, this one looks a little better. This is like a solution where this is a flying plane or a flying car. This was designed to fit in a garage, and you can actually drive it to a gas station, fold up the wings, fold it up, fill up the gas tank. And so, again, this what's holding back MLearning. I think if you try attacking the problem or try enabling a large organization, and you go down a separate design path, you're going to end up with the first picture. And if you go in with a holistic view of the world, you're going to end up with something like that. The second picture, which is a true flying. It's a new thing. It's not a car. It's not really a plane. It's a new thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think I remember a while back, Rick, you and I had a chat about MLearning and the tracking issue. I believe someone had said that, tracking isn't that important, and then we both disagreed that tracking was essential for MLearning to be successful.
Right. That's kind of a common thing out there. And I'm hearing this a lot, too, that, ROI isn't important. And I keep saying, people who say that I've never cut payroll, they've never actually had to pay a vendor, they have no idea what it takes to run a business. Because I agree, you can't judge everything by a pure ROI formula, but you can apply a certain amount of financial smarts to what you invest in, because you can't just invest willy-nilly. You'll go broke quickly. Yes. Unless you're buying 50 mics, that's different, but that's a whole other thing. Yeah.
So that's one of the key things, Joe. One of the key takeaways today would definitely be the tracking. What else can you add to what's holding what's holding mobile back.
Well, one of the things that, again, we had a blog, or a whole blog series on this, and we still have a few more episodes to go in that. One of the things is this. Exactly where this came from, I'm not exactly sure, but so I call it a half-truth. It's the people don't want to take a 2-hour training course on their phone, and I call that a half-truth because if you look at that statement, it's set in the negative. And as an analogy, I said, well, yeah, people don't want to spend 11 hours on a plane either. Like, yeah, you're right. We don't want to spend 11 hours on a plane. Now, if I spin that a different way, what if I said, people want to leave a frigid urban environment for a lush tropical island? Oh, yeah. In other words, if you state what people want is access to an e-learning course or access to education in general on their phone. And my airplane analogy is it's an 11-hour flight from New York to Maui. So if you ask people, do you want to go to Maui? Well, sure they do. So making back to the point was really when people go down this path of people don't want to take a 2-hour long course on their phone, that's not really what we're, maybe not. As I put, my 20-year-old son read an entire the Hunger Games trilogy on his iPhone. So maybe at 20-something, maybe they will take a 2-hour course on their phone. What I'm saying is that however long the education is, give people access to it on their phone.
Now, Joe, I'm impressed. You have a 20-year-old son. You barely look in your 20s yourself, so that's good.
Well,
keep it
thanks,
up.
But he's my middle son. My oldest one's 24. So
Wow.
Yeah. Now, I have a solution for your Hawaii thing.
What's that?
It's an 11-hour flight from New York. You move to LA, it's only 5.5.
Oh, okay. That's probably a great idea. But so what we've seen is that with that kind of out there, it's this concept of chunking up the content. And when where exactly that came from, I'm not 100% certain. But when people start going down that path, all of a sudden now I have to change my instructional design. Mm-hmm. Now, as opposed to designing an education piece, call it a course, call it a module, whatever you want to call it, as opposed to focusing on this education thing, I'm now having to take my whatever I'm trying to impart to somebody and chunk it up into tiny pieces. Well, in other words, if step one is rethink everything you've ever thought about instructional design, if that's your going in position, it's like, well, geez, oh man, that's going to be that's a tough road to hoe. So we think that's, again, that concept of a 5-minute chunk on a mobile device only is, while there's certainly probably some great application of that, and on a broader perspective, it's probably not. I think that's more of an impediment, actually.
No, and I think what's going on with chunking is, and this is valid from an adult learning perspective or just a cognitive adult learning perspective, adults learn better in small chunks versus the long chunks, and that lends itself to the mobile platforms. And I think that's probably where some of that is joining in with mobile. As if you chunk something smaller, well, one, you consume less bandwidth, and two, it may be better for the actual learner. Again, depending on what they're learning.
I think it actually is really valid point. I also think it's somewhat related to the fact that you mentioned earlier this concept of people don't want to. We don't want to talk about tracking. Right. Well, I can solve your chunking problem by bookmarking. So yeah, you can take it. Put War and Peace in a course and let me have access to it, and I may only take 5 minutes of it on my phone, or may read 5 minutes of it on my phone, but I still have access to it. I may spend an hour if I'm stuck on a tarmac somewhere. I may do a lot more on it. So if you don't allow someone to track and you don't allow bookmarking, well, yeah, you don't want to send someone down the path of a 2-hour long piece of education that they then have to figure out where they left off.
Now, another question is, does all the learning that an organization produce, does it all have to be available mobily, or can we use some discretion in terms of what should be mobile and what should be done in-house?
I think, fast forward a couple of years from now, everything you won't make that discrimination, and that's what we're actually working. That's what from a software perspective, that's what we're focused on, is providing one course. Mm-hmm. Design the thing, and how you give people access to it, it doesn't really matter. So I want to erase that line between the two. Design that focus on the education. I mean, there's a lot of, let the instructional designers do their thing. Design what's appropriate. Put the knowledge checks in where you're supposed to put knowledge checks in. Make it interactive where it should be interactive. If I happen to use my iPad and you happen to use your 40-inch Google TV and this guy happens to be stuck on his desktop, that's great. Whatever. Focus on. What we're striving for is, I think the folks, our customers, and the folks out in the training education world have enough challenge, headaches, constraints, and that kind of stuff put on them. Mm-hmm. So I think what they really need to do is, this may sound funny coming from a technology company or a software company, but really you want to take technology out of the equation. Don't make the instructional designer bend over backwards trying to figure out how to cram 38 minutes of stuff into a 8-minute chunk. Let them do their thing and let the technology take care of itself.
It's interesting that in the digital arena and digital publishing, Adobe just released the CS6 suite with InDesign, which is doing exactly that. You design once. So the designer, the graphic designer, the page designer doesn't really have to care about what platform it's going to.
Right.
In essence, when you publish, it does a universal publish. You're on a Kindle, you're on an iPad, you're on a PC. It automatically adjusts it's really interesting. And I guess that when we get to e-learning it that same way, then we won't have to worry about a lot of the things we're worrying about now.
Well, I agree, and that's what our approach is. So as opposed to saying what's holding back MLearning, I guess what will free MLearning, and that's platform independence. Don't make me build the HTML version and the Flash version. I mean, Internet Explorer still has there's still a lot of desktops out there.
Yeah.
And so,
did you hear that Google Chrome actually worldwide has now finally beat Internet Explorer in terms of large? I was surprised. I thought Firefox was further along, but Chrome has really made a jump.
Yep. Yeah, it has. So again, it's platform independence, firstly. Secondly, it's device independence, because one of the other things we've seen is that's kind of holding back MLearning is what I call device-specific templates. In other words, there's some solutions out there. It's, hey, step one, select your device-size template. Like, well, wait a second. I got this guy has a Samsung Galaxy tablet. That guy has an iPad, and I know the guy wants to use his phone. And I'm like, so now I got to design three courses plus desktop. So the way you kind of free up that whole situation is you provide device independence. And some of the advanced things you can do in HTML5, you can actually, and this is what we've done, is we've enabled just that, is this dynamic sizing and scaling solution that gives you true device independence. So platform independence first, device independence second, and then the last thing would be communication independence. That tracking thing. I don't want to go into the whole gory details, but a lot of LMS vendors used most of them used Java to implement SCORM, and that just won't that won't work on your iPad. The Java platform isn't there, and so what we've done is we've bundled in multiple communication protocols, kind of like that InDesign example you mentioned. Launch the course. If you happen to launch me as an AICC thing, well, guess what? An iPad does fine with AICC. We can bookmark that. You want that same course, launched as a SCORM object? Well, that's fine too, because we can talk SCORM. So those three things: device independence, platform independence, and communication independence. In my opinion, those are the three things that kind of help unleash, if you will, or
that's great,
and ensure broader adoption.
Now, I do have on the final slide. I think we may have touched some of this already.
Yeah.
Is that that's kind of
Yeah, pretty much. Now, I have another question coming out of the chat room, and it's, what can IDs use to track MLearning development tools or an LMS? Do you have any suggestions, Joe?
CourseAvenue Studio.
Hey, that works.
Yeah, and again, our approach is really what we've invested our time, just like, again, going back to kind of tie this all together, what we saw in the ADA 508 compliance challenge was it's really complicated. There's a lot of nuances to that market. When you look at the mobile world, you just look at a video. You try to do native HTML5 video, And I, question out to the audience, how many people know what an OGG file is? I mean, there's there's not a whole lot. It's a much new world. So what we've really focused on doing is kind of providing that device independence layer, that communication independence layer, and then letting people put their own content in. And we have our approach is really a best of breed approach. There's a lot of like what I would call HTML5 animation tools out there. I would say another Adobe product, Adobe Edge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great product for creating what I would call trailers, animations,
It's their Flash replacement, but Flash in the old days, the way Flash used to be.
Yeah, and so our approach is like, and that's not for everybody. I mean, it's a timeline-based thing.
Right.
They've done a good job of simplifying it to what you can, but at some point, it's like you're not going to let any random subject matter expert log in and give them Adobe Edge and tell, hey, build a course. I mean, that's just not going to happen. However, in the hands of an e-learning professional that can use something like Edge, that's great. Create your interaction in Adobe Edge, and then we provide a mechanism where you can actually pull that into CourseAvenue, and it'll be a part of your overall mobile course. So let the subject matter experts or instructional designers do their thing, and the couple people you have in your organization that know how to program and or can be tech geeks, let them use any random tool to create, let's say, HTML5 interactions, and put those in as well. But that's and then so if you were to again design the whole course, you design it agnostically. You design the course per your instructional design capabilities and whatever you're trying to do, and then the technology will kind of fall in behind the seat, will follow suit.
Which is the way it should be.
Yeah.
That sounds really good. Joe, where can people get a hold of you?
Website is www.courseavenue.com. We have we've been doing a kind of a slow rollout on our mobile technology. We did a webinar for our customers, a customer-only webinar. We had a great response from that yesterday, and we're planning a new webinar, kind of a formal launch of our mobile technology coming up in June. And so tweeting, there's #CourseAvenue is a place you can follow us on Twitter. And on the website, we have a good cartoon. So kind of summarizing a lot of this stuff and kind of encapsulating our vision. On our website, we have a little cartoon up there that we've made. And we're actually going to launch a second cartoon, kind of just describing our vision of how this can all work. So under MLearning, there's a little drop down that says watch this. And that'll kind of give the audience to take a look at a little animated version of what we do.
And you also blog as well, right, Joe?
Yeah, and a lot of all my pontification here as far as what's holding back MLearning, there's a whole lot up there right now, and we've had a good dialogue with a lot of different people on that as well. So we kind of, that title is kind of like, what do you mean, what's holding back MLearning? So it's been a little bit somewhat controversial. We've had some people that give us feedback and that kind of stuff, which is good. I mean, I think this overall good dialogue is just something that's I respect a lot of people's different opinions and like just to share ours, and I appreciate this opportunity to get our take of the world put out there.
That sounds great. Are you going to be doing any?
Controversial is good though.
Are you going to be doing any trade shows or any talks publicly?
Well, coincidentally, I'm actually at George Mason University at the eLearning Symposium June 5th and 6th.
Okay.
And there we're talking about back to the handicapped access thing. It's tremendous. We're going through a success story with the U.S. Department of Agriculture where they had about 50 people creating 20,000 pages of content in about 9 months, all 508 compliant.
Interesting.
And so that's that. And then MLearnCon will be out there. In what capacity, we're not sure right now. So we have a lot of different things going on, but that I'll definitely be out visiting out there.
That sounds great. Well, Joe, a pleasure having you on today, and we wish you luck on the platform. Actually, it sounds like you guys are doing well. It sounds like it's a good platform, good idea.
Well, yep, I appreciate the opportunity again and look forward to any other questions or chat. People feel free to send them our way, and there's a contact us link on our website and or email joe.gorup@courseavenue.com.
Okay, and what was your Twitter hashtag?
Just CourseAvenue.
CourseAvenue.
Got it. Right, great. Well, thanks a lot, Joe. We appreciate having you here. Colleen, we will see you next week. And everyone in the chat room or watching the recording later on, thanks for watching. And we'll see you guys next week on eLearnChat. Have a good one, everyone.
Hey, take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.
Bye-bye.